Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, as you were starting the intro to the show, two things occurred to me almost simultaneously. Number one is I have no idea who won bold predictions for last week. And number two is we are heading into the longest regular season trip, I think, of the entire time that I have covered the team alongside you. So this might be the highest stakes bold prediction show in terms of the number of nights on a cot of shame during a regular season game of any we've ever done. I'm a little stressed. I'm not going to lie. Just that hit me and I was like, oh my, this is going to be aggressive.
What? Aggressive. And we're trying to come up with bold predictions for an Iowa game. So this, I feel, is not going to just be aggressive. It's going to be contentious because some of these predictions are, wouldn't be bold in any other world other than an Iowa game. I'm just assuming, Tom, based on your history. So, in terms of who won last week, it's not important.
Because good. Okay. Good.
I'm
Good. How not important is it, Tony? Is it like really not important or is it only slightly not important?
It's only 1 point not important. You did get one correct, and not just the freebie. You got the one that was Ohio State forces at least three turnovers. And they forced 3 turnovers. Although I will say Aiden Child's knee was down on one of those, so it shouldn't even count. And then I didn't get any right, but I did predict. My 2-point bold prediction was Jeremiah Smith would get 2 touchdowns, one from inside the 17 and one from outside the 34. Now, Tom, when I tell you that he had a 17-yard touchdown in a reception and then the 19-yard rush. So, like, if he had something outside the 34 and a 17, and you, with the wording that I had said inside the 17, I feel like that might have been the end of the show. Like you would have not have given in, and I would have had to go back to the review and see, did I say inside or did I say from? And it would have not gone well.
Growing up, there was a sportscaster in New York named Warner Wolf who's worked at the NBC station in New York for a million years, and his signature line was, "Let's go to the videotape." And I feel like we would have had to go to the videotape to see. I like the fact that you're pre-angry because in your mind, I'm picking a fight over something that also you didn't get it because you didn't get it, but you're picking a fight in your mind because, well, what if I had gotten it? Then you would have said I didn't get it. And I feel like, Tony, there is enough stress and drama and consternation in the world right now that we don't need to create imaginary fights. Save it. We'll have plenty of real ones on the show in just a minute. You don't need to go seeking out fights in your mind.
As we always say before the show, when we're complaining about anything, save it for the show. So let's begin the show, Tom. I will let you go first. I will allow you to go first for no reason.
Your honor. All right. So how about this one, Tony? The Iowa Hawkeyes have not allowed a rushing touchdown all season long. Not once in 4 games has a team crossed the goal line with the football on the ground, which will make it ever more shocking when the Buckeyes run for at least 2 touchdowns on Saturday.
That's pretty impressive, Tom. Do you know how many times Ohio State has rushed for at least 2 touchdowns in a game this season?
How many times has Ohio State played Iowa, Tony? We talked about this before the show. It's not Western Michigan is not walking through that door, Tony. Akron is not walking through that door.
I know. And we go back and forth and you flip flop on how you feel about this every single time. When I'm doing it, you're like, well, you're equating it to something else. When you're doing it, you're equating it to the opponent. Tom, I will say this. Okay, so the Ohio State rushed for two touchdowns against Akron, 6 against Western Michigan, 5 against Marshall, 2 against Michigan State. I would at least consider 3 touchdowns, or we go with Ohio State rushes for 2 touchdowns, but they're outside of some sort of a yard mark. Like anything inside of 5 doesn't count.
How about Ohio State runs for 2 touchdowns, but one of them is at least 17 yards?
I hate you so much right now.
You got to speak louder. I'm not sure that people can hear you say that you hate me so much right now. So go ahead and say that again.
I'm sure they can tell. Okay, gosh darn it. We need to get rid of this get out of jail free card when I'm not using it. Okay, this is something that is not fair when not used by me. So
Ohio State runs for 2 touchdowns, at least one from the 17-yard line or further out, 17 plus.
Hey, I do not care for that one because that happens every single game.
Every single Iowa game?
Well, I don't even know that it didn't happen last. Yes, it did happen last week against Michigan State because maybe it didn't. At least 2 touchdown rushes
with 19 yards.
Yeah, that's true. So that was. Oh gosh, this has happened every single game, and now we're predicting it boldly to happen in a 5th game on a 5-day road trip. One of at least 17 yards. No, Tom, no 1-yarders allowed.
You can pick one player who can't score from 1 yard out.
An Ohio State Buckeye.
Yes.
Tony,
How
about this? One 1-yarder is excluded.
All right. One 1-yarder is excluded. What I really wanted you to do is have to pick between, is Will Howard going to be the one who scores from 1 yard out, or is Travion Henderson, or is Quinshon Judkins? That's what I really wanted you to have to do. And then pick the wrong one and get extremely mad. That was the goal there.
Will Howard has rushed for a touchdown in 3 consecutive games.
He sure has.
Just as an FYI. Okay, my first 1-pointer should be much less contentious because it's bold. So I'm going to say this, Tom. Here's my 1-pointer. Ohio State will have a rush of at least 20 yards.
Okay, so I have this one. I have this one on my list as well, and I thought he's going to fight me on this because he's going to say this is not remotely bold. Because, Tony, neither Iowa nor Ohio State has allowed a 20-plus yard run this season. 2 of 4 teams among the NCAA FBS football teams. And I thought, he's going to look at this and he's going to go, please. They do this every week. They do this 5 times every week. This is not bold at all. So I think we need to bid this one because I looked this one up as well. I think we need to bid this one up. Tony, Buckeyes will have a rush of at least 24 yards. Your counter.
Can I finish? Ohio State will have a rush for 20 yards and Iowa will have a rush for 20 yards. Both teams will have a rush of at least 20 yards because neither team has allowed a rush of 20 yards, joining Army and Ole Miss. One team rushing for 20 yards is not bold, Tom, and I can tell you that was probably your 2-pointer. I am saying both teams will allow a rush of 20 yards in this game for the first time all season. There you go.
All right. That one I'll allow. That one's good.
Thank you.
All right. How about this one? Each of the teams turns the ball over at least twice during the course of the game. I don't know how many times Ohio State has turned it over this season. It feels like it has not been that often.
It has been. They have turned the ball over 3 times this season. So at least 2 turnovers for the Buckeyes and at least 2 turnovers for Iowa. I like that one. No, they did turn the ball over twice against Marshall. This is the best team they've played. So I was also thinking, one of mine that I was thinking of was Will Howard turning it over 3 times or 2 times rather. But I didn't think that was necessarily a 1-pointer, maybe a half, maybe a quarter. If we're, maybe that would be the free one that I would give you, Will Howard turning the ball over twice. But I do expect some turnovers in this one. Will Howard has turned it over in 3 straight games with interceptions, and could have very easily been 2 interceptions last week. So I will go ahead and allow this because it hasn't happened yet, but I don't care for it, which is, as we know, the best or worst kind of these. So both teams turn it over at least twice. All right. Tom, I'm hoping you don't like this one. Here we go. So this is something that has not happened this season. So I'll just throw that out there right there. In fact, the history of time. 4 impact plays combined for Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom. And we're talking forced fumble, fumble recovery, tackle for loss. No, sack is the same as a tackle for loss. Interception, pass breakup. So they have not done that. I went back and looked. I think they've done it maybe 3 times. Caleb Downs has not done more than 2 of those things, and neither is Lathan Ransom. And they have not done those 2 things together at the same time. So I am saying 4 impact plays combined for Caleb Downs and Lathan Ransom.
I don't care for this one, and I don't feel like I have a basis to fight you on this one, which I really don't care for, even more so that I don't care for this in its entirety, because I feel like we saw what the game plan is going to be with Caleb Downs this week. I think you're going to see a lot of Caleb Downs very close to the line of scrimmage. I think you're going to see, I think he only technically had 1 tackle for loss last week, but he very nearly had 2. And Lathan Ransom has sort of been an impact play machine all season long. So I have to grudgingly allow this one, even though I think it's very likely to happen, just because I think we've seen at least one of them is going to be very close to the line of scrimmage. You may see both of them close to the line of scrimmage at times, because I don't think Iowa has a lot of deep shot potential. So I don't have a reason to say no, so I have to grudgingly say yes, but I really don't care for it.
No, Tom, you say they don't have a lot of deep shot potential. I did watch one of the Iowa games, and Cade McNamara threw a Hail Mary that made it nearly 50 yards. So I think you might be completed. Well, I don't recall. I don't believe it was, but it almost went 50 yards in the air.
Yeah, that's yeah. So if I say, Tony, if my next one is Iowa does not have a play of 50 yards or more through the air, would that be considered bold? Because I will happily take that one. I didn't have that one on my list, but well, I'm willing to take that one if you're willing to allow it.
We would have to bid it up because I also have that one. No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. That's too bad. All right. So how about this one? The Iowa Hawkeyes are averaging 5.7 yards per passing attempt. The Buckeye defense is allowing 5.5 yards per passing attempt. So that would be 5.6, so we meet in the middle. Buckeyes are going to hold Iowa to 4.6 yards per attempt or less, Tony. 4.6 yards per attempt. I will let you know, just because I know you're not the biggest stat head, that's quite bad. A 4.6 yards per attempt day would be quite bad as a quarterback. I'm going to say the Buckeyes will do that, or perhaps, Tony, even less.
Even less. Tom, I am not the biggest stat head, but I will tell you this. Iowa has played 2 Power 5, Power 4 opponents, Iowa State and Minnesota. In those 2 games, Cade McNamara has averaged 3.35 yards per pass attempt.
I did not look at the game by game breakdown there. Well, so nevertheless.
I'm going to decline.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about this one, Tony? In 4 games this season, the Iowa Hawkeyes have given up 6 total points in the first and fourth quarters combined. 0 points in the first quarter, 6 points in the fourth quarter. The Buckeyes are going to score more than that, at least 7 points in both the first and fourth quarters of the game.
I mean, I don't care for that one either. Like, that's 7 points in the first quarter for Ohio State. Is that really bold? 7 points in the fourth quarter for Ohio State. Is that very bold? I think it's more bold in the fourth quarter because you don't necessarily know whether it's the first team or the third team out there.
Correct.
But it could be the first team and they could still be trying to score. And this is a team that has scored, like 40 points a game?
See, here's the thing. If the first team is still out there in the fourth quarter, I think it's safe to assume that the Iowa Hawkeyes have probably not put up 45 points to keep this shootout very close. So it's probably a relatively low-scoring game. So therefore, it's less likely that they would score in the first quarter. This, I think, feels like a sneaky, not likely to hit one. We can find another one if you'd like, but I think that's a sneaky, not particularly likely one to hit.
Here's what I'll say is Ohio State is averaging 7 points in the fourth quarter. They're averaging over 9 points in the first quarter. So I would say we can do this, but one of those quarters has to be 10 points.
So how about the Buckeyes score at least 17 points total between the first and fourth quarters?
Yeah, we can do that as well. I'll allow it. Again, we cannot have these shows be infinite length. They do have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Recently, we've been soaring through these shows, and then once we start to get to the 2-pointers, we start to bog down. And now here we're not even necessarily finally halfway through the 1-pointers and only halfway through the show. And me explaining that fact has taken up more of the show. So at least 17 points combined in the first and fourth quarters for just Ohio State.
Yes.
I found that when I post these now on both the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse, and also and put them on YouTube in the video, when they see these in actual writing, people are more horrified and shocked by these bold predictions from Tom. So at least 17 points in the first and fourth quarters combined for Ohio State. That is only offense.
I don't recall saying that.
I should have said something about that. We'll get it in post.
Mind but you didn't.
All right, here we go. Arvell Reese. Do you know he's like third on the team in tackles? Just by the way, that's just an aside. I'm saying he has 2 tackles for loss on the season. I'm saying at least 1.5 in this game. I think we might see some more 3 linebacker sets. Going to see some aggression from him. 1.5 tackles for loss for Arvell Reese in this game. Don't know how you could possibly contend or be angry about that or say that that's not bold.
Well, Tony, this is sort of the inverse of when we're talking about how you can't take, the previous games because they're going against the Iowa defense. So you have to hold them to a different standard. Tony, it feels like there's probably going to be a lot of tackles for loss. I see you loading up on the Ohio State defense will have a bunch of tackles for loss. And given the fact that they are playing the Iowa offense, I'm not sure exactly how bold that is. I will allow this one at 2.0 tackles for loss. That seems like a fair compromise.
I will say this. Iowa's only allowed, Iowa has defensively 18 tackles for loss this season. They've only allowed 18. So they're just over 4 per game. So I think predicting at least 1.5 for one guy. And here's the other thing I will tell you. I like it. I like my 1.5. 2 is too much. 1.5 is just enough because of the linebackers swarming. Tom, these linebackers have not been playing well.
Tony, plays between the 17 and 34-yard line on the Iowa side of the field. I'm not asking for both sides of the field.
Yeah, okay.
Plays between the 17 and 34-yard lines. The first one does not count. The first tackle for loss between the 17 and 34-yard line does not count. And if it's just a half a tackle for loss, then only the half doesn't count. We're not taking a full one away. Just whatever that first play is, where Arvell Reese makes a tackle for loss between the 17 and 34, it does not count. On the Iowa side of the field, if Iowa's in Ohio State territory, it counts.
I'm powerless to stop this. This is the frustrating part of the show. When the holy numbers get invoked, then you're just like, well, I'm just along for the ride here. So, okay, Arvell Reese, 1.5 tackles for loss. But if one of those tackles for loss occurs between the 17 and 34 on the Iowa side of the field, the first one, whether it's a full or a half, does not count.
Correct. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. We agree.
Tony, in the entire history of college football, going back to 1869, Tony, only 4 years after the Civil War ended, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, Very, very sad day in our history, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
Rutgers and Princeton played a football game, 86-69. And not once in that game, nor in any game since then, has Jeremiah Smith played a college football game and failed to score a receiving touchdown. However, Tony, I will boldly predict that Jeremiah Smith does not score a receiving touchdown on Saturday against Iowa.
I'm going to pause for a commercial break right here. I was thinking about this one like a few days ago. I was like, no. That's too hateful, too disrespectful. Probably going to be wrong. But just the fact that, I'll say it now, we're going to allow this. The fact that we are even considering this, talking about this, is the only proof that you need of Jeremiah Smith's immense talent and the greatness with which he has played this season. You don't even need to watch the highlights. Just the fact that in this show, we're considering, hey, Jeremiah Smith not scoring to be a bold prediction. It's going to happen at some point. And this is one of the things that I meant to, and I think I was looking up. I just have to find my notes down because I was trying to go back and find the last time an Ohio State wide receiver scored touchdowns in their first 5 games. And I don't believe I found anybody. And I went back to the 50s. And so once you get back to so far, when the season leader had 3 touchdowns, it felt kind of unnecessary for me to look at games 4 and 5 at that point. But I wouldn't want it to be thorough. So no, you're predicting something to happen you're predicting something to not happen that has never happened. See how I've done this now? See how I've flipped this on you? No Ohio State receiver has ever scored a touchdown in their first 5 games. And in the first 5 games of a season, whether they are a true freshman, whether they are a 7th-year COVID senior. It has never happened in the history of sports since the death of Abraham Lincoln, since the end of My American Cousin's run, since the end of the Appomattox Courthouse. I don't know.
Tony, I will, if you would prefer, I will predict that Jeremiah Smith does score a touchdown.
No.
No. Okay.
You were waiting. That was how you were going to turn it on me the entire time. If I put him in a fight, you'll say, okay, I'll just have him do the other. It's like, well, I don't care for either of these. So no Jeremiah Smith touchdown, not doing something that has never been done. And now we're calling that bold. If you need any further proof of Jeremiah Smith's greatness, this is ridiculous. I'm so infuriated. Anyway, let's continue the show, Tom. Here's something that has happened more than once, many times since the death of Abraham Lincoln. A linebacker interception for the Buckeyes. Now, we saw Cody Simon almost get one. We did see a Buckeye has an interception. Gabe Powers has an interception. The other 2 interceptions are by Denzel Burke. So I am saying a linebacker comes down with an interception. And since it's only 1 point, I'm not trying to put a name on it. Not trying to get crazy. I'm just saying any random Buckeye linebacker.
Yeah, I think that's a fair one. Just if it was just they get an interception, probably, that wouldn't obviously be bold. If it was a cornerback gets an interception, that's probably not bold enough. But the linebackers, linebackers being the linebackers, it's not a position where you necessarily expect a ton. They did. Cody Simon very nearly had an interception last week. He very nearly had an interception a couple weeks ago. So it feels like this is going to happen at some point. But it hasn't, other than the Gabe Powers one. And that was a deflection. That was a pass that hit, Edric Houston's helmet or something. So that was kind of a fluky play. So I'm going to have to allow this one with no further qualifications or restrictions.
Perfect.
All right. Let's see. How about this one, Tony? We talk all the time about 220, and it's gotten to the point where that's now way too low for Ohio State most games. So we're going to kind of take this and put a little twist on the old 220, Tony. Only the Ohio State passing game goes over 220 in this game. All three other phases, Iowa rushing, Iowa passing, Ohio State rushing, all fall at least 50 yards short of 220. So they don't rush for more than 170 yards. Iowa doesn't rush for 170 yards. Iowa doesn't pass for 170 yards.
It's cute, but Ohio State rushed for 170 yards against Akron. So they can certainly be held to 170 yards against Iowa and below that. And Iowa has thrown for 161 yards against Power 5 opponents. So they're not going to throw for more than that against Ohio State. And I don't see them rushing for 170 yards, below. I don't see them rushing for more than 170 yards. So I don't care for this one at all. It would need to be, and frankly, 100 yards is not going to do it for me because the way Iowa's running game goes, it could be shut down. The passing game, we know, can be shut down. Iowa has not thrown for more than 100 yards, has not thrown for 100 yards in a game against a Power 4 opponent this season. So anytime we're talking about 220 and trying to, I don't want to go 220 because I'm a coward. I want to do it this way. There's going to be some pushback time. Now, if you want to go 220, I would by all means try it here.
I don't in fact want to do that, Tony. So how about this one? I anticipated that you would probably be very nitpicky this week with the number of nights on the ton of shame at stake. So let's just keep it very simple. Ohio State scores a defensive touchdown on Saturday.
Well, and that's really the one that is, it's a free space for a point because we had it. I think I had this one last week, or you had a Jordan Hancock pick 6 for a 3-pointer. I have something similar, and we're going to allow a defensive touchdown. Has always been a 1-pointer. That's allowed. And mine is different, so we'll get to it when we get to it. But defensive touchdown for Ohio State, we'll allow that one. Okay, so that is your 5th 1-pointer. My last 1-pointer. So Iowa this season, stingy defense, arguably the best defense in the nation. I would say if you look at these defenses, you look at Iowa's defense, you're going to be like, that is the best defense I've ever seen. People talk about the 85 Bears. You're hearing more and more talk about the 2024 Iowa Hawkeyes. They have allowed just 2 plays of 30 yards or more to two Power 4 opponents. I'm saying Ohio State has at least 3 plays of 30 yards in this game. So that's more than Iowa has given up all season to Power 4 opponents.
Mm-hmm. How many Power 4 opponents have they played?
2. Iowa State and Minnesota.
Mm. And are either of those teams as good on offense as Ohio State?
Well, I cover Ohio State, so I know them better than I know Minnesota or Iowa State, so I don't want to speak for them.
Did one of those teams score 17 points against a team that gave up 70 to James Madison?
Again, I cover Ohio State. I'm not here to talk about Minnesota or Iowa State. Tom, because you're going to say no. 3 plays.
I'm not going to say no.
Okay.
I'm not going to say no, Tony. I'm going to say, what about this? 3 plays of 34 yards or more, but the first one that occurs between the 17 and the 34-yard line on the Ohio State half of the field does not count.
See, I was going to say 3 plays of 34 yards or more, and we were just going to cut it there. That was
I'm sure you were, and that's why.
And so now you're saying
3 plays of 34 yards or more.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And if there's one that occurs from scrimmage between the Ohio State 17 and the Ohio State 34,
okay,
that it does. The first one does not count. All the others after that only count. The many plays of 34 yards or more.
How about the first one between the 17 and the 33?
I really don't care for your disrespect of the canon on this show, but I will allow it because I know we're already pushing 30 minutes and we haven't even gotten into the multiple point ones where I'm sure we're going to get even more heated.
I mean, it doesn't really matter because we're talking about the Ohio State side of the field, but why would I even, no, I'm not taking, Tom, I'm giving you yards on that one. 17-34 of OSU's field. Again, math, not my strongest subject, but all right, 3 plays of 34 yards or more. Okay. Jeez. All right, Tom, what's your first 2-pointer?
All right. How about this one? The Iowa Hawkeyes in the final box score will be called for 0 penalties for 0 yards.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's...
So they could be called for 1, but if Ohio State declines and it shows up in the final box score as 0 for 0.
Let me take a quick look to see. Have you looked to see how often they get penalized?
I looked at something and then I thought it was in their game notes, and I'm looking now. So now I'm wondering where I came up with this one because I wrote these down yesterday.
Well, here's the thing, Tom. They've committed one. They've been penalized once in the last 2 games. So one of those games, the Troy game, they were not. There were no penalties assessed.
Yes, but Tony, in Power 5 games, how many penalties have they committed?
They have committed 4 total. 3 against Iowa State, 1 against Minnesota. Boy, I would say this is pretty rare, I think. Let me look to see what they did last year. They were not penalized twice. So I don't feel like this is a 2-pointer unless we do this. I will allow it for this, but any penalty, a penalty counts, a flag counts, whether it's assessed or not, except the first one will not count. There's too many double negatives here, Tom, with the assessed and not assessed. So
if there are more than one declined penalty, if there's more than one declined penalty, then this fails. But if there's 0 penalties on the final stat sheet and there's a maximum of 1 penalty that is declined by Ohio State, then
no more than 1 penalty declined.
And offsetting penalties, Tony, obviously don't count here.
Oh man. See, I need a distinction between flags thrown and penalties assessed. Okay, but the number of flags thrown cannot exceed 34. No, 4. Does that work for you?
Flags thrown, so including offsetting and declined. Yes,
but
yes.
The math doesn't work out that way. Then anyway, so no more than 1 declined, no more than 4 flags thrown. I don't even know if that's possible. Anyway,
and we're counting plays, not if 3 refs threw a flag on the same play. Do you want to go back and rewatch the game to count the number of flags thrown? I know that you do not. So
for 5 days on the couch, I do. All right. So that was your 2-pointer. Here's my 2-pointer. So, and I don't think this is likely to happen at all. So this is just free bonus for you, Tom. Iowa has allowed 4 rushes, just 4 rushes of 10 yards or more this season. I'm saying Ohio State gets double that in this game alone. Ohio State has 26 on the season, so they're averaging well under 7 per game. Some would say that's more like 6 per game. I'm saying,
some would say yes.
I'm saying 8, and this would double what Iowa has allowed to this point.
8 rushes of 10 yards or more for the Buckeyes. That's a good one. I like that. 4 per game. Yeah. I think that's a good one for 2 points. I think that's I will allow that one.
Perfect.
All right. So
cool.
Tony, I went back. Do you remember, Tony, when we made that trip to Nebraska in 2019? It was a simpler time. I think that was the game where the Nebraska fans finally gave up and let go of their red balloons in the second quarter when they got a first down. They decided not to hang on to them for for the first touchdown, as is tradition. Tony, that is the last time that Ohio State allowed fewer than 71 passing yards in a game.
Okay.
71 passing yards allowed to Western Michigan this year. That is the last time Ohio State allowed fewer than 71 passing yards. Now, I know what you're going to say. Iowa had less than 71 passing yards last week. Yes, that's true. That's why we're going to say Ohio State, we're going to split that in half, 35 and a half. Ohio State allows less than 35 and a half passing yards to Iowa in the first 52 minutes of the game. So up until the 8-minute mark of the fourth quarter. Once we're in the 8-minute mark of the fourth quarter, we're potentially into garbage time. Under 35 and a half passing yards for Iowa in the first 52 minutes of the game.
How about under 34 and a half?
You son of a gun. Hoisted on my own petard.
This is bold, but it's also Iowa. And again, this is going to be part of the problem. They do not throw the ball well against Power 5, Power 4 opponents. They, 62 yards passing last week. I don't know how many of those came in the last 8 minutes. I've watched some of the game, but you look like, last year they threw for 56 yards against Penn State, 37 against Wisconsin, 65 against Northwestern, 60 against Tennessee, 94 against Nebraska. Granted, mostly a different quarterback.
Different play caller too, Tony. Rather famously, different play caller.
I have not seen evidence of that, even though I know it's true. I have not seen evidence. This number is just so low that I can't not allow it. 34 yards passing through the first 52 minutes.
This is one where either you have to allow this or we have to not do it, because realistically, lowering the number much below 34 and a half, it's like the over-unders for the Iowa games last year, where it would get to like 27 and a half. And it's like you almost mathematically cannot complete a football game with fewer points scored than this. So
yeah,
it's very difficult. This is and it's going to take one broken tackle in the first 52 minutes of this game for this to get shot. So it would have to be an almost perfect game by the Ohio State defense.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to know when the last time that they actually did something like this. So we will allow it, not even grudgingly. I don't know what is the next highest happy version of that. But here we go. My 3-pointer. Ohio State pitches a shutout, and the defense outscores Iowa in this one. Now, that could be safety. That could be touchdown. That could be JT Tuimoloau kicking a field goal.
I'm going to modify this ever so slightly. Ohio State pitches a shutout and outscores Iowa by at least 2.5 points. So if JT Tuimoloau does kick a field goal, you win. But I need more than just one safety on this one for 3 points, because Iowa, as the person who constantly says you never predict a shutout.
Mm-hmm.
I thought briefly, maybe I'll say Ohio State gets a shutout this week. And I'm like, he's going to say that's not bold. So now to have 3 points, I had Ohio State scoring a touchdown on defense for 1 point. I'm not sure that maybe a shutout is 1 point bold, but I'm going to just need 2.5 points. Ohio State outscores Iowa. If they get 2 safeties, Tony, God bless. But one safety is not quite going to get me there.
Safety in the third quarter counts.
Safety from the 34.
Between the 17 and 34.
Safety in the third quarter counts.
Or you picked a quarter.
No. Let's see. A safety.
You took your finger off the checker.
Third quarter's fine. I'm gonna give you the third quarter, because I want, when this happens in the second quarter, I want you to be mad at you and not you to be mad at me.
Oh, don't worry, I will be. All right. What's the free one there, Tom?
Tony, you'll remember last year, Michigan State made a mistake during the pregame show, showing an Austrian painter on the scoreboard. Tony, Ohio State does not know. Let's see. What's a good freebie here? Tony, I got to tell you, it's quite relieved that one hit for you last week. That was a little concerns, but no, it did not. It's not a problem. Let's go with this one. at least one Ohio State running back finishes with a positive total in the number of yards gained on the ground. So at least one Ohio State running back, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, James Peoples, Sam Williams-Dixon, Rashid Cisse if he's back. I mean, TC Caffey has a miraculous recovery. Whoever it is, finishes with at least 1 yard rushing on the day.
Okay. I like that one. I think that could hit. Tom, my free bold prediction for you, and this is, again, very confident in this Ohio State defense. We've got a lot of defensive predictions here. Cade McNamara is held to under 75 yards rushing.
And just to be clear, if he's not, how many points do I get? Is that 3?
I believe that
2?
is 3.
3. Okay. Tony, I'm reminded of JT Barrett running for a bunch of yards against Minnesota in the snow. This would definitely be the funniest way for you to lose this. Just Cade McNamara absolutely rips off an 85-yard touchdown on the ground.
But even if he does, he's probably still going to be held under 75 yards rushing because of the sacks. So
Cade McNamara runs for 2 75-yard touchdowns. Yeah, purely for the comedic potential here, I absolutely have to accept this one as my freebie.
There you go. Thank you, everybody. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up before you go. Want to thank you all for tuning in. As always, a reminder to continue to find us here at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Hit that bell to be notified. Hit the subscribe button to subscribe to the channel. And of course, find us at buckeyehuddle.com, where you can become a premium member right now and check us out on the message board, see what's going on behind the scenes there, and the paywall on all of our X's and O's stuff, recruiting info, things of that stuff going on with the team. So you can always find that at buckeyehuddle.com. So that will do it for today. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Later.